And I will be a mayor who doesn't bow down to corporate interest, doesn't take his orders from billionaires, and sure as hell doesn't let ICE steal our neighbors from their homes. There are no kings in America. Whether that's Donald Trump, Andrew Cuomo, or the Republican billionaires who fund both of their campaigns. To everyone who pulls me aside to whisper with the best intentions, you have already won. I am sorry, but the days of moral victories are over. And as my father told me years ago, when the right wins power, the left writes a great book. Those days are over too. Because this is a campaign that is going to win on June 24th.
I am trying so hard to not get my hopes up about the New York City mayoral race, but it's clear that something special is happening right now, and Zohran Mamdani has somehow managed to recapture the magic of Bernie 2016 and arguably even Obama 2008 because of how politically talented he is and because of the movement that he's built. And speaking of Bernie Sanders, he just endorsed Mamdani, and last week a survey from Public Policy Polling found that Mamdani had actually passed Andrew Cuomo in polls for the first time. So right now, Mamdani has all the momentum, and you know he's inching closer to victory given how the political establishment has officially mobilized to try to stop him. So this is really a pivotal moment, not just for New York City, but for the Democratic Party in general, because as Corbin Trent contends in an op-ed for Common Dreams, this race will determine who runs the Democratic Party going forward. And he argues this is where we find out if Democrats will transform or keep managing democracy's decline while the world burns. And I agree. Failure on top of failure on top of failure has culminated in this moment where Democratic voters finally have a chance to demonstrate their commitment to beating fascism once and for all. See, if Mamdani wins this primary, it'll communicate to me that Democratic Party voters actually are serious about real change. But if Cuomo wins and Democratic Party voters run back into the arms of an establishment right-wing Democrat who capitulates to Republicans, it'll indicate that voters in this party actually aren't serious about turning things around, and it'll confirm that they're incapable of learning any lessons. So suffice to say, the New York City mayoral race is the battleground for the heart and soul of the Democratic Party, as evidenced by the fact that the status quo has suddenly lined up behind Cuomo to stop Mamdani now that he's surging. But it's not the first time that we've been here. When Bernie was surging back in 2016, almost every elected Democrat came out to endorse Hillary Clinton over him when he became a real threat to her. And in 2020, as you all know, Obama pressured the other centrist Democrats to drop out and coalesce around Biden in order to beat Bernie Sanders, and that strategy worked. And the lesson is that the Democratic Party establishment has thwarted the candidates best suited to stop fascism again and again. Their chosen candidates, Hillary Clinton, Kamala Harris, they were defeated by Donald Trump after they ran uninspiring milquetoast campaigns when people wanted change. And even though Biden managed to beat Donald Trump in 2020, as we now know, Trump came back with a vengeance after voters were once again disappointed that they didn't get the change that they were promised. And just last week, David Hogg was ousted from his position as DNC vice chair on a technicality after he dared to challenge Democrats to do better. And if you're curious as to why the Democratic Party establishment is so resistant to change and why they seemingly care more about beating the left than Republicans, Corbin Trent explains why that is. He writes, Democrats can't stop President Donald Trump from deploying Marines in Los Angeles. They won't stop backing Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu while he bombs his way out of corruption charges. But watch how hard they'll work to destroy Zohran Mamdani if he wins in New York City. Right now, Israel's attacking Iran, Trump's got troops on American streets, the world's on fire, and New York Democrats are desperately trying to resurrect Andrew Cuomo a man who resigned as governor due to piling sexual assault allegations. The Democratic establishment needs Zohran to fail more than they need to stop fascism, because if he succeeds, if he proves government can build things and improve lives, voters might start asking what's their excuse for 30 years of managed decline. They're not stopping war criminals because that doesn't threaten their business model, but a mayor who proves Democrats can deliver for working people instead of donors, that's existential. And I want to be very clear, I don't think that Mamdani is a panacea. I'll never put all of my faith into a single politician ever again, especially after Obama. But Corbin Trent is precisely right here. Mamdani is addressing the root causes that led to Trump's rise in the first place. If Obama actually delivered on the hope and change that he promised, Trump would have never been viable in the first place. See, if you address the material needs of voters and actually increase their standard of living and make things better, they will be less desperate and less susceptible to antisocial messaging from right-wing extremists like Donald Trump and other demagogues. But this requires a transfer of wealth from the richest Americans back to the working class, which is something that the Democratic Party refuses to deliver on since they've been suckling on the teat of corporations who rigged the economy against us for years. Billionaires and large multinational corporations have replaced us as the Democratic Party's core constituency. It's why Democratic Party House Leader Hakeem Jeffries prioritized mending fences with Silicon Valley donors after the election over the young people and pro-Palestinian voters that the party just lost. The policies Democrats need to deliver to meaningfully address our material needs would put them at odds with their biggest donors, which is why they're not offering us the change they know we want. But if we continue to only get minor incremental changes and things overall continue to get worse, fascists will continue to seize on our collective desperation, which is why candidates like Mamdani are the antidote to fascism, because improving people's lives in a substantial and concrete way is how you make right-wing populism irrelevant forever. It's how FDR was elected 4 times and Democrats had a supermajority in both chambers of Congress. But as Corbin Trent points out, since Mamdani poses an actual threat to the status quo, it's why the powers that be are currently mobilizing against him. For example, back in 2021, the New York Times editorial board called on Andrew Cuomo to resign in the aftermath of allegations of sexual harassment from multiple women. But fast forward to today, and they're essentially backing Cuomo begrudgingly, writing, "Our advice to voters in a vexing race for New York mayor. Given those polls, the crucial choice may end up being where, if at all, voters decide to rank Mr. Cuomo or Mr. Mamdani. We do not believe that Mr. Mamdani deserves a spot on New Yorkers' ballots. His experience is too thin, and his agenda reads like a turbocharged version of Mr. de Blasio's dismaying mayorality. As for Mr. Cuomo, we have serious objections to his ethics and conduct, even if he would be better for New York's future than Mr. Mamdani." And Cuomo expectedly took this as an endorsement and ran with it, writing on Twitter, "I agree with the New York Times. Experience matters. This is not the time to learn on the job." Sure, buddy. See, this is what Corbin Trent was talking about. This is a liberal newspaper all but endorsing the candidate that is objectively worse, who they called on to resign, who's less effective at fighting fascism. For example, Cuomo was on camera saying how he'd respond to ICE when they inevitably break laws in New York City.
They are going to do things that are illegal and unconstitutional, but let's not overreact.
So he's implicitly saying he'll allow it. And he says that he's not going to overreact. Amazing. Now contrast that with Zohran Mamdani, who confronted Tom Homan to his face, and you'll see that one of these men actually cares about stopping fascism, while the other does not. And they were both put to the test this week again after the ICE Gestapo illegally arrested Brad Lander, who's the New York City comptroller. He's also a mayor candidate as well. And his wife explains on Twitter, while escorting a defendant out of immigration court at 26 Federal Plaza, Brad was taken by masked agents and detained by ICE. And I'm going to show you the video of Lander's illegal arrest, then juxtapose that with the responses from both Mamdani and Cuomo.
Do you have a judicial warrant? Do you have a judicial warrant? Can I see the judicial warrant? Can I see the warrant? I will let go when you show me the judicial warrant. Where is it? Where is the warrant?
I have it in my hand here.
You're obstructing. You're obstructing.
I would like to let go. To see the warrant.
Put him in custody. No! Take him back. Take him in. Take him in. Take him in. Step back. Step back. Step back.
You don't have authority. You don't have authority to arrest U.S. citizens.
Sir.
You don't have the authority to arrest U.S. citizens. You don't have the, I'm not obstructing. I'm standing right here in the hallway. I asked to see the judicial warrant. By asking for a judicial warrant? You don't have the authority to arrest U.S. citizens asking for a judicial warrant.
So the video is outrageous. They illegally detained a public official simply because he asked for a warrant. This is quintessential authoritarianism that must be challenged as forcefully as possible. Now, Mamdani responded by going to the scene immediately and demanding Lander's release.
That ICE has no interest in the law. It has no interest in order. It only has an interest in terrorizing people across this country. And in this exact moment, New Yorkers and Americans are looking to leaders to meet this moment.
Now, how did Cuomo respond? Well, he responded by tweeting about it, saying, "This is the latest example of the extreme thuggery of Trump's ICE out of control. One can only imagine the fear families across our country feel when confronted with ICE. Fear of separation, fear of being taken from their schools, fear of being detained without just cause. This is not who we are. This must stop. It must stop now." So that's his response. Not even a strongly worded tweet, just a milquetoast tweet, where he's basically saying, "I stop, don't, you can't do that." I mean, this is some Chuck Schumer shit. It's pathetic. But as he said, he's not going to overreact. So he very clearly is not overreacting. But I mean, the ICE Gestapo is breaking the law. And if there ever was a time to overreact, it's when masked men abduct duly elected officials that they're not allowed to detain in your city. I feel like you can't really overreact to something like that because it is so extreme that you have to react in a forceful way. Otherwise, it's going to continue to happen. But if you're wondering why right-wing Democrats like Andrew Cuomo are so soft on fascists, well, it's not just because they're weak. They're also corrupt. As Mamdani pointed out on Twitter, if you're wondering why Andrew Cuomo is so soft on ICE and why he hasn't called for Brad's release, you can just follow the money. And he shares a screenshot of an Intercept article explaining how Cuomo's biggest donors profit off of ICE terrorism. And this right here is a microcosm of a bigger issue that plagues the Democratic Party. It's why so many centrist Democrats haven't delivered for voters in a meaningful way, because they benefit from the status quo. So why would they change a system that they benefit from? Why would they uproot for-profit industries whose donors contribute to their campaigns? It's why Democrats don't want to give us Medicare for all, because their health industry donors profit from our for-profit health insurance system that kills us. You know, they won't explicitly condemn Trump's warmongering with Iran or the genocide in Israel because they're defense contractor donors and AIPAC by their silence or complicity or both. And Cuomo's main pitch is that he's the better candidate because he has experience, whereas Mamdani doesn't. But that's part of the problem. It's that record, right? That's actually a negative. Your experience tells us that you're a terrible fucking leader. And thankfully, Mamdani made this point as well at the last debate.
To Mr. Cuomo, I have never had to resign in disgrace. I have never cut Medicaid. I have never stolen hundreds of millions of dollars from the MTA. I have never hounded the 13 women who credibly accused me of sexual harassment. I have never sued for their gynecological records, and I have never done those things because I am not you.
Exactly. So his experience is a reminder to us all that he represents the corrupt neoliberal status quo that facilitated the rise of fascism in the first place. So I'll say it again. Democratic Party primary voters in New York finally have the chance to demonstrate their commitment to actually beating fascism. It's not just that Mamdani is an objectively better candidate than Cuomo in every conceivable way. He's a once-in-a-generation leader whose charisma rivals that of Obama. It's not just that he has good policies. It's that he's actually very good at selling those policies to working-class people. It's not just that he's anti-fascist. It's that he's creating a blueprint to resist fascism for other Democrats to follow. And oftentimes, left-wing messaging gets hijacked by centrist Democrats so they can appear more progressive than they are in order to appeal to a base that they know is increasingly yearning for real change. For example, after Bernie 2016 galvanized a movement for Medicare for all with an expectation from voters that healthcare should be a right in this country, not a privilege, well, establishment politicians like Joe Biden and others co-opted that rhetoric from the movement about healthcare being a right while rejecting the policy that would make healthcare a right. But Mamdani, he is the one that is co-opting the message from liberals, which is something that leftists haven't really done effectively yet. To show you what I mean, there's a push by right-wing Democrats for abundance. It's basically an attempt by liberals like Ezra Klein to rebrand neoliberalism. But here's how Zohran Mamdani has responded to this by saying, quote, "The government must deliver an agenda of abundance that puts the 99% over the 1%. And as David Sirota pointed out, this dude is very smart to simply appropriate abundance as part of his message, pushing the kind of corporate challenging populism that the abundance guys loathe. Really brilliant maneuver. And I totally agree with that. If you watch the interview that Sam Seder did with Ezra Klein, you can see that he is mad that the left doesn't like his abundance agenda because we see through the bullshit. And one of the things that he said was he implied basically that, this is something that the left should also be on board with. And so if this agenda is our agenda too, then, Mamdani is basically saying, well, it is what I say it is. And this is one of the strategies that Republicans use to push their agenda, and it's very effective. They reframe things to suit their narrative, and it works. They're not anti-gay, they're pro-religious freedom. They're not anti-abortion, they're pro-life. Democrats have never, ever been good at messaging, but here you have a candidate that's actually very good at messaging, who's charismatic, who actually is effective at fighting fascism. I mean, Zohran Mamdani, for all intents and purposes, is the total package, as far as I'm concerned, not to glaze him up too much, but he is a very, very talented individual. And having said that, I don't think that any one politician is our savior because real change has to come from the bottom up as opposed to the top down. But as far as candidates go, Mamdani truly is the best of the best. So if he manages to beat Cuomo on June 24th, I will actually feel hopeful because that right there is a sign that regular Democratic Party voters are serious about beating fascism. And listen, as a leftist, I would view Mamdani's victory as an olive branch to those of us who felt left out of the broader Democratic Party coalition for years now. See, Democratic Party politicians have made it abundantly clear that they want nothing to do with the progressive left. They'd rather court anti-Trump Republicans like Liz Cheney instead of the progressive left. But Democratic Party voters have the chance to finally right that wrong and welcome the progressive left back into the coalition, which is needed to beat Donald Trump, because it's clear that liberals and anti-Trump Republicans, that's not a big enough coalition to defeat fascism. But liberals and the left, that right there is. But if voters opt for Andrew Cuomo, a corrupt, fascist collaborating sex pest, in a moment like this, when voters are yearning for change and they're taking to the streets saying no kings, if they go with the same old, I think it's safe to say that nothing is ever going to change. If they rejected Bernie twice and rejected Cynthia Nixon and they reject Mamdani and basically shoot down every chance at real change we have whenever it's an option, that right there is evidence that the Democratic Party's voters are part of the problem. I'm sorry. So once and for all, Democrats, prove me wrong. End the cycle of perpetual disappointment and actually vote for somebody who gives a damn. Please.